What's going on, guys? Welcome to today's video. Hey, if you do any kind of metal work, at some point you're going to have to cut sheet metal. So today I'm going to show you 3 different ways to cut sheet metal for any skill level and any budget. So for the purposes of this video, we're not talking about this paper thin sheet metal. That's easy to cut. You can just cut that with shears. The tools that I'm going to show you really excel in 16 gauge, 10 gauge, a little bit thicker stuff, which is technically referred to as plate. But it's commonly referred to as sheet metal, so I call it sheet metal. But anyway, the tools I'm about to show you, when I talk about cutting sheet metal, we're talking about cutting anything about 18 gauge to 10 gauge. We'll get the most obvious one out of the way first, and that is, of course, the plasma cutter. So plasma cutters are definitely going to be the most expensive thing on the list, but there's a good reason for it. A plasma cutter is probably the most versatile machine in that it can slice through sheet metal really fast and really easy, but you can also cut thick metal with it too. Whereas the other things that I'm going to show you are pretty limited when it comes to anything other than sheet metal. The plasma cutter can do it all. So the way that a plasma cutter works is actually pretty cool. This machine makes an arc between the gun and the base metal, and then with compressed air, it blows that metal out of there. So my favorite things about the plasma cutter is that you can cut an infinite number of shapes any direction. It's basically just like having a pencil and drawing on the metal anything you want. So in that way, the possibilities are really endless with this machine. But the things that I don't like about it are that you have to have a supply of air, to make it work. And some of these run on 110, but really the good ones run on 220, so you got to have 220 power. So there's some limitations in that aspect, but if you have those things available to you, these are pretty tough to beat. So the next thing on the list is an angle grinder, and you probably already have one of these sitting in your garage or your shop. Now, when you bought it, it more than likely came with the grinder wheel. These are like 1/4 inch thick, and they're great at what they're meant for, but don't try to cut sheet metal with these. I've seen people do it, and it's not pretty. So here you can see the difference between a cut wheel that's on the grinder and then the grinding wheel that's in my hand. All right, let's try the grinder. So the biggest advantages to the grinder is, like I said, you might already have one. And beyond that, if you don't have one and you're gonna be doing metal work, you're probably gonna need to buy one anyway. So it's something that you're already gonna need to buy, and if you buy the cutoff discs for it, then you can use it for cutting sheet metal. Now, the biggest limitation to the grinder is that you can really only cut in a straight line. I mean, you can get kind of creative and get some gentle curves with them, but for the most part, these are best in a straight line. The other things that I don't like about it is it's really loud when you cut sheet metal, and they throw sparks, a lot of sparks. I've actually caught my pants on fire a couple times. So, just make sure you're standing in the right spot when you're using this. So the third tool on this list is gonna be a jig saw, and this is something that I don't think most people think of when they think about cutting sheet metal, but it can be done. Let me show you. So odds are, if you have a jig saw sitting in the shop, you bought it for cutting wood, because that's what most people get them for. That's what they're designed for. So when you bought your jig saw, it most likely had a wood blade on it. With a simple change to a metal blade like this one, you can turn your jig saw into a sheet metal cutting machine. Let's do it. Super easy to change. Let's see how it works. So the Jig Saw is probably my least favorite tool on the list just because it vibrates so much when you're using it. But I wanted to include it for a couple reasons, and that is, for one, that you can pick these up really cheap. Like this one, I want to say costs only $35. You can buy grinders cheap too, but what this has over the grinder is that you can cut curves and radiuses with this. You can actually cut pretty tight circles with them. Not like a plasma cutter, but definitely better than a grinder. Now, if you're wondering why I didn't include an oxyacetylene torch on this list, the answer is because I don't like cutting sheet metal with those. The reason being that they put too much heat in the sheet metal and just cause it to warp, and it just kind of makes a mess out of it. Any one of these three tools is going to cut sheet metal better than an acetylene torch. All right, guys, so there you have it. There's 3 different tools you can use to cut sheet metal for any skill level and any budget. Thanks for hanging out in the shop with me this morning, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.